Hey there, everybody. Happy Monday morning to you. Welcome into another Red Chip Heroes Poker Podcast. I'm your boy, Chapadong, and I am supported by DFS Army and the Sharp app as we combine forces to build out a poker community online, live, cash games, tournaments, beginners, intermediates. It doesn't matter. They're all here in our free Discord. Well, I'll put a link down there in the description, but we are here Monday mornings giving you a brand new poker podcast. Today's podcast, 3 huge tips to crush online poker tournaments. Without further ado, let's dive in. We've been talking a lot about cash games lately, a lot of poker ranges, a lot of beginning and entry level terms, but let's combine that with a little bit of poker tournament talk, especially online, because that's where most of you get to play these days anyway. So let's dive in. First thing that we do every week here on the Red Chips Poker Podcast, Red Chip Heroes Poker Podcast, is we start with a hand of the week. This hand actually was sent to you by my brother. My brother plays poker too. In case you hadn't noticed that, we are a poker family over here in St. Louis, Kansas City in the Midwest. And my boy is my poker coach, and he sent me a hand this week. Now, I probably didn't get this exactly correctly because back and forth all weekend long, we were talking about this hand. And once we got it all settled out, we decided that, we both hate each other now, and all bets are off for our Christmas gifts and everything else. I tore the piece of paper out and I threw it away. I wasn't thinking about this being the hand of the week until I looked back at my own hands in my own play this week and was like, you know what? Let's do some call-in submission type stuff someday, and why not start with a hand to discuss from somebody else? Why not? So, like I said, every single detail might not be the same, but this is going to be about 90% correct. He plays over in Kansas City, 1-2 no limit cash game, and hero is $350 effective. My brother buys in for like $250. So, homie's up on his stack on the day. Early position raises. We don't really have a lot of player reads. He gave me some. I don't remember them, but we don't have a lot of. I want to say that the villain in this hand was maybe a little, I think he called him a lag station, which is kind of like a maniacal guy that doesn't really fold either. So it's kind of like a true recreational player that's just kind of in there trying to see everything all the way through, betting and raising and being aggressive. However, not really one to fold when you really punch him in the face either. So kind of an interesting villain type. But early position raises to $12 here. Standard raise. Hero calls with pocket sevens. I should have probably included that somewhere in the hand history. Hero calls with pocket sevens. 4 other players call. There's $70 in the pot. Typical low stakes live, massive multi-way pot. And hero here is mostly out of position. The flop comes queen of whatever and then 6 of hearts, 4 of hearts. And the early position player follows up with his raise and leads out for $40. Hero calls, and the late position player calls. Now, I put a question mark by hero calls because I want to know what you would do. This was one of the discussion points that my brother and I talked about. This was one of the spots where we wanted to debate a little bit. So I think that it's a pretty decent sticking point here in the hand to debate. Some people fold, some people call along. Depends on what you want to do with 5 players in the pot. $190 turn, though, after $40 goes in 3 times. $190 turn, and the 7 binks off. Now, remember, my brother had pocket 7, so he just turned his set. And the early position player now checks. Hero bets about $75, and the late position player pushes all in for 300 plus, putting hero all in. Early position player folds and gets out of the way. What does hero do? Well, if you want to know what hero did, if you want to know what hand he saw, you want to know that he won or lost or whatever, you've got to come to the end of the podcast because that's where we do the reveal every single week. So let's dive into our 3 tips. We'll come back to the hand of the week at the end of the podcast. Tip number 1. Now we're going to play through this really, really fast today. This is going to be one of the shorter podcasts that we probably do. But play games you can beat. Tip number 1, play games you can beat. You're going to hear me echo that a lot. Now, I don't care if you come from the daily fantasy sports side or if you come from the sports betting side with the Sharp app or where you come from, you're going to hear the same themes echoed all the time in these games. Focus on low-hanging fruit. Pick it off. If you don't have an edge in the game, you're not going to win. You're just not. You're just gambling. And we're not in this to gamble. We're in this to learn and get better. We're in this to learn and grow money. We're in this to invest in ourselves. And online money compounds pretty darn quick because the hands come out a lot faster. The tournaments play a lot faster 24/7. It's not just one daily tournament at your local casino. These things are going at 8 in the morning, noon, 1 p.m., 3 p.m., 10 at night, whatever. You can play lots and lots of tournaments a day, especially if you play sit and goes, which these are going to be similar to in your online site that you play. Study a lot. I mean, like a lot. You have to gain an edge. These guys that you're playing against already have an edge on you, most likely. You have to catch up. Start at lower buy-ins. If you're used to playing $10 tournaments or $100 tournaments or whatever, don't do the same thing online. Go down to $1, $5, whatever, because you're going to be playing a lot more of these tournaments to gain experience. And you're going to want to keep that budget the same. If you're used to playing $100 tournaments at your local casino, first of all, when you come into a $100 tournament online, you're going to get your ass kicked because those guys are a whole lot better. Similar stakes don't matter. Online at similar stakes is tougher than live play. That you've just got to know. And number two, if you're going to be playing 4 of these, 5 of these a day, well, instead of playing 1 or 2 a week for $100 or $200 a week, which most people could probably do, you might be compounding this into $1,000 or $2,000 a week. And unless you have a job that pays you just a shit ton of money, you're not going to be able to keep up with that for very long. And we want poker to be a long-term venture because as you study, and gain skill and gain edge, you need to give that time to play out to compound that edge and catch up with what your opponents are doing to you. The other thing you need to do is track your results. You have to track results. You need a Hold'em Manager, Poker Tracker, something like that, where you are tracking your results. I have mine right here on the phone. On my phone, this tracks my cash game play right here. And I can pull up charts and I can pull up win rates and I can pull up hourly play and all sorts of things on my phone, on my app that I track for the last, year and a half. And I can put numbers to where I know I beat my games. I know when it's time to move up to the next level. I know when it's time to move back down because I'm getting my butt handed to me, right? I track my results. Otherwise, you're just guessing. Like I said, if you don't study a lot, you're just guessing on hands, you're just guessing on what you're doing. But if you don't track your results, you're just guessing as to whether or not you can even beat the game. You have to know. What if you were a winning player at the $1 or $2 level, but not at the $5 level? And you're playing all $5 tournaments. Well, you think you stink. And you don't. You're just not playing the low-hanging fruit. You're not finding the games you can beat. By tracking your results, you find the games you can beat, and then you focus there. And then you move up when the time is appropriate to move up. We're all on a different path. We're all on a different journey. We're on the same general train, but we're all going to get there at a different time. That's okay. That's definitely okay. Tip number 2 would be to gain experience. Again, you're behind the 8 ball here if you're just starting into this hobby. Way behind the 8 ball. A lot of us have been playing since 2004. We've seen the evolution from basic charts, not focusing on position or anything, to learning about position, to learning about capitalizing on some of our opponents, to now the GTO world with game theory, optimal, and all of these fancy terminology. And you may not know what the dealer button is. That's okay. You need to gain experience. You need to gain it fast because these guys are way ahead of you, and you need to close that gap. You need to also work your way up to multi-tabling, especially online. Obviously, you can't sit at 2 tables in a casino, but online you can have 2, 4, 8, 10, 12, 20 tables open at once. I used to play 4, 6, 8 tables of $100 no limit. Before Black Friday hit, I was about to jump up to 200 no limit and play 4 to 6 tables there. Games were easy. Was paying some utility bills at home, supplementing my income. Life was good. Moved to double up tournaments. Played a lot of online sit and goes, double up tournaments. If you know what those are, those were just 10-person sit and goes. Top 5 get paid, and I was 12 tabling those at the $100 buy-in level on dial-up internet. Which, to be honest with you, I had my internet burp on me one time and it shut all my tables off, and that was about $1,000 that went down the drain. I got refunded by the site, but man, was I pissed. So there's a risk involved when you used to have dial-up internet, or if you've got storms in the area, you might not want to open up 10 tables of tournaments if you've got thunderstorms in the area. But that said, you want to open up multiple tables. You've got the time. You sit and play one table at a time, and it is definitely definitely going to be a little bit slower. You want to pay attention to the table, but you don't want to get bored. You don't want to be paying more attention to your playlist or paying more attention to, surfing porn on your phone or whatever the heck it is you do in your free time. You don't want to be doing any of that. You want to be focused in actively playing poker, right? So open up 2 tables, 4 tables. As you open up more tables, you're going to pay attention to the things that matter, and you're going to start kind of distancing yourself from the things that don't matter. You would obviously lower your buy-ins. You would start slow. You would lower those buy-ins. Instead of doing $10 satellites, you might drop down to, or $10 sit and goes. You might drop down to $1 sit and go, so that you can do 10 at a time. It's the same $10 per hour or whatever. That you're slowly going to add 2 tables, 4 tables, 6 tables, 8 tables. Basically, you'll know when you've hit your sweet spot by when you start to time out on tables. You should never time out on a table. You should be able to navigate and negotiate all of those tables at once. If you're starting to time out, you've probably added a few too many tables. So back it down a couple. If you're at 10 tables, back down to 8. If you're at 8, back down to 6. But don't just sit down and say, well, I'm going to play 4 tournaments today at once if you've never done that before, because you're going to get dizzy. You need to start slow and work your way up to it. Now, as you open up more tables, you're adding volume. You're adding more hands per hour. More volume will compound the winning and losing. So again, it's very important that you know that you can beat the games that you're opening up multiple tables into. And now you're compounding the winning. This is like mass multi-entry in daily fantasy sports. You're just running, and instead of playing $10 a day with 10 single $1 bets, you're playing, $100 a day. You're just adding volume. Once you know you have an edge, once you've found that edge, you can add volume. That's going to compound the winning. Now, if you don't have an edge, it compounds the losing. There's no doubt about that. But when we sit down in a live casino out there in real life land, we're getting between 25, 28 hands per hour. Online, one single table can be delivering as much as 50 hands per hour or more. So if I'm playing 2 tables, that's 100. 3 tables is 150. 4 tables is 200. Instead of playing 25 hands an hour at my local casino, I'm playing upwards of 200 to 400 hands per hour. I am going to compound that edge, up or down. So I need to make sure that I have that edge. Does that make sense? We don't need to be watching the runouts. This goes back to playing until you time out. We don't need to be watching the runouts. Like if you're one of those guys that sits down, oh no, I'm all in. Let me see, is that next card going to get me? Dude, you'll know. If you've got 6 or 7 tables open, you don't have time for that. You click away from it, you go to another table that has other action on it that needs your attention. You'll come back and you'll know that, okay, well, I'm not in that tournament anymore. I guess I lost. You don't need to know how. You don't need to know why. The money's in. It's over. You do, however, need to know if your opponent is tight or if your opponent is showing down weak cards. There are things you do need to know. Yes, definitely pay attention to those. But you don't need to sit down and be a drama king and stand up at your computer and act all like you're on TV or any of that kind of junk, which a lot of people do, which is a little bit ridiculous. You're here. This ain't show friends, right? This is a Jerry Maguire line. It ain't show friends. It's show business. You're here to win money. You're here to maximize your time so that you can do other things in life, like cut your grass when you need to. So you need to, when you're sitting down at the table, you need to be there, you need to be focused, you need to be actively engaged, and you need to be maxing out your time and your efficiency. And that doesn't mean sitting there and chatting and telling somebody to, go F yourself in the chat room. It doesn't mean anything like that. You don't have time for that. You don't have time to sit there and run it once or run it twice. You don't have time for any of that baloney. Save that for the live stuff, okay? Now, I'm going to add more to this later, but satellites are not the ideal tournament structures for this. So again, if you're interested, stick around, and we'll talk about that right before we do the reveal from the big hand. You know what? Actually, this is a good little halftime spot. Why don't you go ahead and like and subscribe the video while you're here? Like, subscribe, turn the notifications on. Get the Red Chip Heroes Poker Podcast every Monday morning, dropped right to your phone to let you know, oh my God, we're good. That way, you can get into the community, get involved, actively participate in our Discord, which, again, link will be down below, and become a better poker player yourself. Tip number 3 would be to exploit poker players in the player pool. You're going to exploit one or the other. You're either going to exploit the poker player or you're going to exploit the poker player pool. One or the other. How are you going to do that? Well, if the site allows, you're going to use a HUD, heads up display. That tracks stats. If you don't know those statistics, those stats, and those acronyms, you need our Discord, right? Like, you need it bad, because you need to, again, you need to catch up. The industry knows this stuff. VPIP, PFR, CBET, FCBET, win money at Showdown, $, and more. There's folded 3-bet, there's 4-bet, there's all there's all sorts of acronyms that you need to know. You need to know all your stats. Okay, this will help your live play a ton as well. Exploit the regulars on their stats. If you don't know what 10-8-4 is, you need our Discord. Okay, if a 10-8-4 player 3-bets you, ace-10 suited is a fold, man. That player is tight. VPIP is voluntary put money in pot. PFR is pre-flop raise. And 4 is a 3-bet percentage. If that guy's only playing 10% of hands, he's pre-flop raising 8% of the time, meaning he's only calling like 2% of the time. And 4% of the time he's 3-betting. That 3-betting range is really, really strong. Your ace-10 suited is dead. Dead. Toast. Get rid of it. Okay? Now, if he c-bets, a continuation bet on the flop, if he raised, and then the flop comes out and he c-bets, he continuation bets 90% of the time, you need to be check raising that guy more, because he's doing that way too much. You can exploit. What does your opponent do too often? Or what does he not do often enough? You need to find these little holes in people's games. And when you find him, if he's too tight, raise him more. He'll fold. But when he raises you, get out. Because he doesn't do it often enough. He's very, very strong. If he c-bets all of the time, then raise him more. He's got a lot of bullshit in his range. Right? The flop came out. He's a tighter player. He c-bets all the time, and his flop came out 9-8-3. He doesn't have any of that. He might have pocket 10s or better. You'll find that out. But he's got a lot of king, queen, king, jack, queen 10, crap like that. When he c-bets, raise his ass. He'll get out of the way an awful lot of the time, especially if he's got a high fold to check raise number or something along those lines. These are all things that are in these trackers and in these. This is an online thing. I feel very fortunate that I cut my teeth online. I learned all the HUD stats. I learned my own stats. I learned what was tight, what was not tight, what was aggressive, what was passive. Numbers like aggression factor and things like that came into play. And these things helped round me out so that when I did start playing more live in casinos, out and about locally, I already knew all this stuff. Gave me a huge advantage to help me beat these games. A lot of these guys don't know any of this that play in live casinos. And so if you know just the basics of this stuff, you can walk into a casino and kill them. You can just crush them. Okay? You need to know your ranges. Do you remember some of the ranges that we put in previous podcasts? If not, go back and look. We've got the diagonal chart of pocket pairs. We've got the suited hands on the top right and the off-suited hands on the lower left. You need to know what a 10% range looks like. You need to know what a 20%, 30%, 50% range looks like. You need to know what a 6% 3-betting range looks like. You need to know these situations because they're going to come up a lot. And you need to be able to picture them in your head when they happen to you. When I sit down live, I know that old man is only playing about 10% of his hands. I know what his range is. Just based on 10% of his hands, I know what his range is, right? Then I look at another guy over here who's calling with 50% of his range. Well, I know what that is. I know it doesn't have aces and kings and ace-king. I know the little hole up in the upper left-hand corner of that graphic that I've shown before. I know that's not there. No queens, no jacks, probably no ace-king, whatever. I know those hands don't exist. But I know all the other junk, king 9 suited, king 6 suited, jack 7, all that junk, queen 10 offsuit. I know all that stuff is in there. So when the bets start going in the pot, I know what I'm up against. It helps me make better decisions about you, right? It helps me exploit the player once I know who the player is. If I don't know who the player is, I don't have any data on you, I don't have any reads on you, I don't have any history with you, then I just have to default back to what the typical player pool at this level does at these stakes, right? Like I know one thing's very common in 1-2 no limit cash games at the casino and small stakes online poker tournaments. Nobody bluffs the river. Not enough. They do a little more today than they used to 10 or 15 years ago, but they do not bluff enough on the river. Usually when they bet the river, they got something. You have to determine what it is, but it ain't a bluff. So your ace high is probably no good. Okay? If your opponent doesn't bluff rivers, and you know this about him, then you can over fold. The thing is, you might not know that about that specific opponent, but what you do know is that the general $1 tournament buy-in level doesn't bluff rivers. So whenever anybody you don't know does it to you, they bet big on the river, just fold. Just fold unless you're very, 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 very strong. And again, you have to know and you have to study and you have to know what strong is. Strong might be an overpair. Strong might not be. Strong might not be even a straight, right? Like if there's 4 hearts on the board, I think we all know that a straight's probably no good there, especially if your opponent doesn't bluff enough and then he comes in big bet. Get out of there with your straight. It's not good anymore, okay? Those 3 things, very, very simple. Just to go back to them, play games you can beat, gain a lot of experience fast, and exploit the players in the player pool. Those 3 tips right there will help you crush online tournaments in 2024, okay? Now, satellites. I said I was going to come back to satellites. Satellites are a different structure. A lot of times, top 5 people, there's 40 people enter, top 5 people make it to they're going to play a lot weaker and a lot tighter in the middle stages because it's more important to cash these tournaments than it is to win them. Okay? You don't need to win and be first place in chips. You just need to get into whatever pays and goes to the main event. Okay? They're also not the same buy-in level. You're going to play a $10 satellite that's going to buy you into a $120 tournament. That $10 satellite has got the skill level of a $10 player in it. The $100 tournament of a direct buy-in has a $100 player in it. It's going to be tougher. It's not the same. Those guys that are playing the satellites are also different strategies and different structures. They're just trying to make the money, like I mentioned. They're not trying to get into the top 1% and really do damage in that tournament. When you get into the tournament, you're going to have to shift gears. If you don't know how, because you're playing 2 different environments, you're at a disadvantage. You might cash a satellite, say, 1 out of every 8 times. You might cash a tournament 1 out of every 8 times you get into that. So it takes you, 64 satellites to probably min cash the tournament. 1 out of 8 times 1 out of 8 is 1 out of 64. If you only cash 1 out of 8 satellites, and then of all of the times you do get into the tournament, you only cash 1 out of 8 of those. Most common scenarios, a min cash when that happens, that's a 1 in 64 shot. You have to play 64 satellites to get into the tournament to cash once. It may be like a number like 1 in 1,000 before you get deep in a tournament and make a big score. That is a whole lot of satellites. That is a whole lot of satellites and a whole lot of time in a different structure than you should be playing for not a lot of results. Okay? You might get a free trip, but you're paying for that through extra rake anyway. Now, I'm not saying satellites are terrible. They're great if you don't have anything else going on, or if you know the differences between the shift that you need. Now, don't kid yourself. Don't tell yourself you know if you don't really know. But you may be familiar with them and you may understand how you need to shift gears and how you need to play in the bigger tournament. That's fine. If you've got that experience, great. But generally speaking, I'm not talking about crushing online tournaments as if I'm crushing satellites. They're completely different animals, and really and truly, they're not that beneficial for your money. They're just a way for a cheaper guy to get into a bigger tournament and take his shot. Okay? And he doesn't realize the disadvantage he's at when he does finally get his shot. Okay? Now, if you're good at crushing satellites and you get into a satellite on average cheaper than the overall buy-in of the tournament was, great, do that. Okay? But most people are better off just directly buying into the tournament itself. It's just a simpler way to go. It also saves you a ton of time. Let's reveal that hand of the week. Hand of the week. Remember, hero is in mid position, 350 effective at a 1-2 no limit cash game. Early position raises. Hero calls. 4 other people call. We're in about a $70 pot. The flop comes queen, 6, 4, 2 hearts. Early position leads for 40. Hero calls. Now, what I told my brother in real time was, I can fold here. Second pair, no set, no bet. He said, why? I said, well, I'm second to act in a 5-way pot. 5 ways. 5 ways. What makes me think that I can isolate the early position guy here? Then my brother countered with, well, what would you do with pocket 10s? Well, I would have 3-bet on pre-flop. I'm not in there with pocket 10s or pocket jacks, right? I would have re-raised pre-flop. But pocket 9s, pocket 8s maybe, I might 3-bet those some of the time as well. I'm really not in there with a lot of stuff. I'm a no set, no bet kind of guy in a cash game, especially when I'm out of position. So I would have never ended up in this position to begin with. But he did. He called. That's fine. I get it. The guy that you've seen lead into the pot or basically donk into this pot may not have, he may have a weak queen. He may have, I don't know, 5-7, ace jack. I mean, he might have a bunch of stuff that you want to keep a little bit on. That's fine. It's a fair appeal. I don't fault it. I'm just saying I wouldn't be there. That's why I paused the video there. Number two, on the turn, you got about $190 pot. The 7 rips off. Great. I missed my 2 outer because I would have folded. Early position checks. Hero bets 75. The late position player just jams all in for 300 plus. What does Hero do? Now, this is a whole different scenario. If I am in the pot, I'm in a different, I'm in a pickle, right? Because I just hit my set. Do I jam here? Do I call the jam? Do I bet bigger? Do I check and rate? What do I do? There's a lot of different things that I can do on that turn that I don't mind. But once I bet and that dude shoves all in, I am immediately thinking about crap. What has me beat? Well, would he do it with a flush draw? I don't know. Probably would have raised the flop with a flush draw if he was going to do it. Right? Say he has queen X of hearts, or say he has ace 5 of hearts. He might, if he's willing to raise his draws, he might not be doing it on the turn. He'd probably be doing it on the flop. But that said, could the guy have, I don't know, 6-4? Could he have pocket sixes and was just waiting for the turn? I guess. But again, my experience tells me he doesn't have queen 7. You might have 6-7. That 7 helped him too. How? Because at the lower stakes live poker game, they bet their gin card. When they hit it, they bet it. So when the guy comes to life that was just kind of calling along, you need to wake up and go, uh-oh, what are the nuts? How close is this guy to that most likely, and where do I compare? Now, that said, 8-5 just made a straight. You got to be thinking about that. You got to at least see that. Now, I know it doesn't make much sense. It doesn't make much sense that the guy has 8-5 because what did he do? Call a raise pre-flop and then call on the flop with a gut shot? Yes, these guys do. Some of these guys do, especially one of those lag station kind of guys that my brother was describing. One of those lag stations that is betting and raising and getting crazy and whatever, and then not folding when the bets go in either and whatever. He's just in there chasing cards. He could be in there. Now, is it likely? No, it's not likely. Even if he does have it, well, now we got to do a little bit of math because we have odds to pair the board and take the full house and beat whatever the straight is, whatever the 2 pair is, whatever the flush card hits if he's bluffing that, whatever, right? And we're ahead of a flush draw, of course. So what does he have? Well, we've got about another 225 behind, and we've got a call into a pot that is 190, 75 of ours that is gone. So that doesn't count anymore. So that's like 260 plus 300 something more, 565, call it close to 600. We've got to call about $225 into 600. 200 into 600 is 3-1. Means we need to be right 25% of the time. Are we correct? Are we ahead of this 25% of the time? I don't know. That's where you've got to range funnel this guy and go through those little diagonals and those little charts and those little squares. And those are the things you got to do. Against some guys, you're way ahead of them because they're bluffy, heart chasing, whatever guys that just are trying to scare you out of a pot. Other guys, like a tighter player, like an old man, you're way behind that. If you have 25% here, you probably do. It's probably fine to go ahead and pay this one off on the chance he's got 2 pair, a lower set. Maybe he has the 5 and he's got 4, 5, 6, 7, and he just picked up the draw and he's banging into that. But you're also not wrong if you remember one of the biggest adages that I can tell you about low stakes live play. When you get raised on the turn, especially by a guy kind of coming out of nowhere that didn't have the betting lead already, you get raised on some guy kind of comes to life, it's the nuts. I don't care what it is, and I don't care how he got there. It's the nuts. So I'm expecting to call this bet, and I'm expecting to win it some. I guess 1 in 4 is about right. But I'm expecting to lose it a lot. And I know what I'm losing to. I'm not losing to pocket queens. I'm losing to 8-5. I know I'm losing to 8-5. Fine. So Down here, as you can see, late position did show 8-5 suited for a turn straight. Hero didn't pair the river and lost. It's okay. That's going to happen. You're probably ahead of a lot of what would do that. But I'm just using this example, not even to beat up on my brother. He is my little brother, by the way, so I do get to beat up on him a lot. I've got the podcast. He doesn't have the podcast, so I get to beat up on him whenever I want. He can't retaliate except in the comment section. But, which I hope he does. Hey, dude, comment, right? Like, subscribe, comment, tell them all that your big brother's the GOAT. All that good stuff. But honestly, this was probably fine. You could pay. I mean, I'm in a pickle too. I probably pay it off. I'm expecting to see 8-5, but I probably do pay it off. And the bottom line is we are going to get in good a lot of times, and we are going to lose. Now, you also had equity. That you had more than 25% equity in the. I didn't. Where you were in the hand when the money went in the pot, sure. 25% of the time, are you ahead of the guy? Maybe, maybe not. But add in the 10 out redraw that you've got to pair the board. Any 4, any 6, any 7, any queen, right? We got 1, 2, 3 queens. If you don't know how to count outs, again, get in the Discord. You got 3 queens left in the deck. You got 3 6s left in the deck. You got 3 4s left in the deck. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and a 10th case 7 left in the deck. But you don't know where they are. And then one of them could pop out. And if one of those 10 comes out, rule of 4, rule of 2. We've got one card to come. You take the 10, you multiply by 2. Boom, 20% of the time, roughly. There's 20 of your 25% right there. He's only going to be bluffing 5% of the time, and people bluff more than that. It's a good call. If I fold, I'm a nit. Now I would have folded on the flop. I don't know if I get it. I don't know what I do on the turn in this spot, right? Because I wasn't in the game. But I can see either one, and I'm probably prone to doing either one based on a player read. Again, exploit the player. Does your player bluff much? If he doesn't, if he doesn't bluff a lot, then get out of there. If he does bluff more often, then boom, make the call, right? So I think that is probably, it's a fair call. It's fine. So that said, it just didn't work out for us this time. Okay? It is what it is. Now, I want to say thank you for joining me Monday morning. I want to say thank you for following the Huge Tips to Crush Cash online poker tournaments. Crush online poker tournaments, not cash games. We'll talk about that maybe another time. Red Chip Heroes Poker Podcast. I'm Chapadong, sponsored by DFS Army and the Sharp app. Hopefully you get a lot out of this. Hopefully you like and subscribe to videos. Comment in the section below. I'll probably comment back. And join our free Discord. Get in there and start talking poker with us. We'd love to have you. We'd love to talk to you. We'd love to teach you how to crush anything from online to live to cash to tournament to small buy-in to big buy-in, beginning stuff, any mixed games, PLO, whatever. We can help guide you through all of it if you jump inside our Poker Podcast Discord, and I will see you there. Have a great Monday, everybody. We'll talk to you real soon.